back to our live coverage of the AWS Summit here in Paris. I'm A.M. Grobelny, developer advocate for AWS Game Day, joined by my faithful friend,
Steve Roberts, developer advocate for .NET and PowerShell.
We've been here all day. We'll be here for the rest of the day as well. You can see it's a beehive of activity out here. It's very exciting to be here. If you joined us earlier on, you may have seen that we played a very special quest on the Game Day platform here with Steve Roberts. If you didn't, we're going to just do a quick recap of what Steve has learned so far in his quest. So we're going to take a look at Steve's screen. Yeah.
So this is the quest, and this is your quest to teach me French.
You've scored some points.
I've scored some points. I have been doing some stuff, yeah. So when we left it this morning, we had a system whereby I had to give you an API endpoint.
You did.
Right? And then you would start sending me French phrases.
And you had to translate
which I had to translate. Right?
Yeah.
So
and these were very common, useful phrases for you. You learned how to say, "What's in your backpack?"
Yeah, I had a chainsaw delivered that I did not order.
You learned,
thing, yes.
I think I received this chainsaw by mistake. That's something you will get so much mileage out of, Steve. You have no idea. But you've scored some points, which, if you've never played a game day, that's a good thing, scoring points. Will you pull up the score events real quick, Steve?
I will.
OK. And we can see, oh, there you go. See, you've translated some phrases a couple minutes ago. You've been diligently working all day.
I've been hacking away between sessions.
Yeah.
I'm converting. Because this morning we did it by hand, right? You sent me the request.
That's right.
Which we could see in, let me jump to some logs here for a second.
Yeah, what was the architecture you ended up choosing for those who didn't get to see?
So you mean now or early this morning?
Earlier.
So early this morning, I just deployed an empty.NET Lambda function.
Right.
That basically echoed the payload that you sent me to logs.
API gateway in front of it.
I had an API gateway in front of it, right? So you could call me.
Yes.
I then took the payload, put that into CloudWatch logs, and we could then go and see the string that you sent me. So let's go take a quick look at something.
I sent you very useful phrases.
There we go. So there's an input phrase. OK, so, well, blah, right?
Yeah.
So then I took that phrase, and we did it manually, right? I went into the Amazon Translate console. I pasted that in, got the English, and then I sent back using Postman to your API endpoint a body that said, here's the translated text, here's the phrase ID that you sent me, so we can match the two together.
Right.
And then a secret API key, which this morning was not so secret because we went into Secrets Manager and got hold of it, right?
That's right.
And then if I got that right, you gave me points.
I did. Right? 20,000 points.
20,000
per
points,
phrase.
Right?
So this is really to motivate you to learn French, as you said earlier, which before we move on to what you've been constructing throughout the day, let's solve one of these manually, maybe using your favorite, PowerShell.
Yeah.
While you're doing this,
PowerShell?
Steve. Well, you know, you use the Amazon Translate.
Yeah, let's
UI.
just go straight into Translate. Let's go back into Translate and show it. Yeah, well, I think we have enough time.
So we've got a phrase, a very common, very useful phrase here, in my opinion.
What am I going to translate now?
I don't know. You tell me.
All right, so we're going to go in here and we're going to select French, and I'm going to paste this in.
Okay.
Okay. Then, at what time does the cemetery close? Very, very grim.
You need to know when that happens. You might miss the tour, the cemetery tour.
I might. All right, so we'll bring up Postman.
That would break your heart, Steve. I know you.
Yeah, right. Here's Postman.
Okay.
And it looks like, awesome, I still have everything we had this morning. All I need to do is change the body, I think. So I'm going to change this.
You'll need to change the phrase ID.
I will need to change the phrase ID, yeah, but at least it's still there from this morning. So I'll just copy that for now.
Okay.
And just back into Postman. And this is the long-winded way of doing it, right? So, and then back in the console, if we go to the CloudWatch logs here, we should have, whoops, where'd it go? There's the phrase ID there. Ah, collapsed it. Okay, so let's take the phrase ID from here. Okay.
Yes.
And in theory, this should match up, and I should get some more points.
You love getting those points, don't you?
I do like getting the points, yeah. All right, so let's send that, and fingers crossed, this still works. Because we haven't tried this bit since this morning. Yeah, solved, right? Check your score. Okay, so it's still working from that perspective at least.
So you could go through, you know, depending on how many phrases I have, you could go and do this for every phrase.
Right.
But if I was sending you thousands of phrases,
that would be really tedious.
What would happen?
But I did just get 20,000 more points.
You did.
So
you learned an important lesson about how to discuss the hours of the cemetery.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay. All right. Good.
I'm still number one. So that's good because I'm the only player. Otherwise, this would be devastating.
Now,
but
Steve.
I decided.
Yeah. This, to my dismay, you've decided. Because I built this specifically to get you to learn French, which I have been trying for 48 hours, nonstop, teaching you French. And then I said, I've automated it. I got it. I'm going to teach him French now through a computer, which Steve loves computers. If you know anything about Steve, you know he loves computers. So I thought, he's going to love this. What did you do, Steve?
I'm not going to want to sit there and go to the console for every message, right? So I'm going to automate it, right? So I actually wrote the Lambda function. Now, the Lambda function isn't finished. Let's be honest, right? We kind of ran out of time a little bit, but we have most of it.
That's true.
We have most of it, and we can see if we can finish it off. So do you want to see the Lambda function?
I don't, because it means your learning journey is over.
So here is the Lambda function, and it's not just a Lambda function. It's a Lambda function that's using our new annotations framework.
Okay.
Right.
Oh,
so
yeah, you love this framework. You talk about this framework all
We've
the
talked
time.
about this before, yeah. So you'll notice that, well, you won't notice because if you weren't here this morning, you wouldn't have seen the code. But the code that we initially generated this morning had an API gateway request input object.
That's right.
Right. And then I would have to get all the various fields from that request object, like the header with the API key, the body.
You had to coerce it into.
I had to coerce it into what I needed, right? With the new annotations, I can just say, I can take my method, my Lambda method,
yes,
and say, hey, this is a Lambda function.
Okay.
Right? And I'm expecting it to be invoked by a post method.
Okay.
Right? And then in the actual function or the method arguments, instead of having this API gateway request object, I actually have logical fields like payload, which is tagged as coming from the body. Okay, and you'll notice here there's a from header, the API key, which we've decided right now we're not using that piece right now, right?
Not yet,
because we've not quite worked out that syntax, right?
Correct.
The idea of the API key is I can check that the message came from you.
Yes, and
and reject it if it doesn't. Right?
Much like most game day content, this is not officially sanctioned game day content, by the way. I built this on an airplane on the way over here to, as I said, educate Steve, which he's now circumvented. But, you know, most game day content simulates real life. And so this simulates when you're working with webhook services from third-party, services, all kinds of things, right? They typically send you a message, something happened in a post body, in an HTTP request, but they have some sort of security measure to make sure that you validate that it's coming from them, okay? Now, the way that this is implemented is not necessarily best practices or secure, but it is illustrative of you shouldn't just take any type of post input that you're getting from the internet, because
that's true.
Anybody could send a message to this URL, right? Depending.
Yeah. So that brings us to the interesting point of I need to get that API key, right?
Yes.
So this morning, when I got the API key, we actually went into Secrets Manager console.
We did.
And we flipped it up and got the key, right?
Why
and
not?
Copy and paste, right? Then it was just on the Postman thing, right? But obviously, we want to do this programmatically, right?
Correct.
So in the constructor of my Lambda function, because I don't want to keep calling that for that API key on every invocation, right?
Because it's likely not going to change often.
It's not going to change that often, right? And if my function's still warm and another invocation request comes in, it's just going to reuse this code, right? So in the constructor, I actually go and get the secret in the constructor, right? So under the covers here, what I'm using is our SDK for .NET. So I've added NuGet packages, which is the package manager for .NET, packages for the Translate service, and the Secrets Manager service.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so we'll come to Translate in a minute, but you can see here that I'm newing up a Secrets Manager client and then passing in the ID of the secret that I want to retrieve, which is called French phrase API key, right? That's what you called it.
I did.
Which gives me back a JSON object, which just because I'm simple and cheap, I'm just deserializing that to a dictionary and then extracting the API key directly from that value, right?
Hearing you say French phrase sounded like French fries.
No, it wasn't French fries, right? And then Translate client I'm going to use later on, right? So So the first time on the cold start of my function, that code's going to run. It's going to cache that API key.
Nice.
If another request comes in almost straight away, it's going to just reuse it. Right?
Okay.
It's not going to call secrets manager again. All right. There are probably other different ways of doing this, but that's what I chose for now.
I mean, each line of code is just another knife in my heart that you won't learn. French
I am learning.
me.
I am learning.
Okay, good.
Right. So anyway, we've already seen this line: context logger, log information payload. That was where we just used that payload to go and do it manually.
Yes.
Right. So here's an example of the input phrase that we get, right? And what I do is I take this and I deserialize it again into a dictionary, right, just for convenience. And then I call Amazon Translate, again, through the SDK by newing up a translate text request. I pass in the phrase that you told me to convert, the input language, French, the output language, English. Okay, that gives me back an object with the translated text. Then what I do is I need to convert it into this JSON to send it back.
Right, to get points.
To get points, right? Now, we know I'm getting points already, so I'm not too bothered about points for the moment.
Wow, points rich over here.
So what I'm doing is I'm forming the fields that are going into that JSON into a dictionary. Okay. So I've got the translated text, the team ID, and then the phrase ID. And then what we were working on just before we came on air was actually converting that to, serializing that to JSON.
Right.
And then trying to call your API in response, doing what I just did in Postman.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, we didn't quite get that.
To bypass the phrases entirely.
To bypass the phrases.
Automate it to get maximum points.
Yes.
All right.
So let's just see
My
if
plan
I
is
actually
backfired.
did. Let's just see if I actually did send back. Yeah, expected death to be 0. There is a, so it didn't like this for some reason. Death is 0 at the end of the payload. So you're going to have to help me debug through this because I've not done this for quite some time.
And chat, too. We're
chat.
We're
if
live.
you're on chat and you know what we're doing wrong here, get involved.
Yeah. Steve is trying to figure out how to send an HTTP request from the .NET HTTP client library, and he's having a bit of trouble here. So help us out.
So what I'm actually going to do, because we actually had this piece working earlier on, and we actually had the response body, and then we added a header to it, if I remember rightly.
That's returning, though. You don't need that doesn't go anywhere.
Right. This is returning from the Lambda function.
Right.
What I was going to send to you.
Correct.
Right. So I want to see if it's actually working correctly.
Oh, I see.
Right.
I see. Fair
so what I'm going to do is you're going to put your X API key, because we've already got it in public, and it'll be torn down after this anyway.
It will. Yes.
API key. All right. So let's just deploy that code and see what happens. Right. So serializing from the dictionary to a string is response body, which I'm then going to pass back again. And this, again, is the simplified way of returning from a Lambda annotations annotated function.
Right.
Right? Instead of having to form up an API gateway response, I can just return this HTTP results. Okay. There's other ones like bad request and so on, where I just chain together what I need and just have that logical response.
Nice.
So let's deploy that, because I want to see if I'm actually getting that JSON parsed correctly.
Okay.
From the dictionary, right?
Because it didn't like that, did it?
It didn't like it. No, it liked it the first time, but then when we changed it to call your endpoint,
it started throwing an error.
It started throwing an error. So we may not get this done in time. We've got like 5 minutes, just under 6 minutes, but we'll take a look.
That's okay.
But what I really wanted to show in this was the annotations framework.
Right.
Right. So I'm not too fussed if I get no points for this.
You get points in my book, Steve, for trying, and then you immediately lose points for circumventing my my education learning path for you.
Look, if you can be automated, automate it.
That's true. That's true.
You see, what I could actually do with this is I could actually write a Lambda function that takes your payload, translates to English, then actually uses something like Amazon Polly to read it, to make it into voice, right, and then send it to me, and I could listen to it, and I'm more likely to learn that way.
Stable?
Whatever that meant.
One day you'll know.
So let's go back to the Game Boy dashboard here, and hang on, where am I going? I need to go to the phrase here. So I'm just going to same URL, it hasn't changed, right?
Okay.
Going to just take it.
Oh, you don't need to update. You can't leave it blank. It's already there.
I can't leave it blank. It is already there, but
you don't have to change anything.
Well, what I was doing, you see, I was just pasting this in.
Okay.
Oh, it's because we flipped page. We kept the page open while we were working with it. So let me go back into here and do this. This should trigger it to start sending me messages again.
Oh,
right?
it should have. It never
It should have
stops.
it never stops.
It never stops.
Oh my goodness,
Steve.
All
Just
right.
like me.
So here,
I built it
that
as an
is-
AM simulator.
That is more true than you might think. He never stops. Okay, anyway, right. So hopefully we just got a brand new invocation. All right. So we go into our log groups here, and 355.17. That looks about right. So here was our payload. Oh, here we go. We got a new one. Okay, so it did not like the JSON that I was trying to deserialize.
Right.
Which we got perfectly fine before. Expected death is 0 at the end of the JSON payload. There is open JSON.
Huh.
Don't like the sound of that. So let's just see what's going on here. What doesn't it like? So we know that we're responding this. I should have got a log information on the response body, right?
Well,
So this must be failing.
yeah, it seemed to
Right.
have an exception on that line on 72.
Yeah. So okay. So JSON serialize from the dictionary,
Yes.
which seems reasonable. Translation is our translated text. Oh, I wonder if your text doesn't translate very well to. No, it's English, so it should be fine.
Yes.
Team ID is good. Phrase ID was the inputs. Phrase ID, which I don't remember changing that, so that's okay.
Did you change anything about the dictionary?
No, I didn't change
Okay.
anything there. So response.logger. So why doesn't it like that serializer? Oh dear. Come on, AM, help me out here.
I'm curious, and this is just a syntax issue that I'm not clear on, but you need you need those individual curly braces for the syntax of creating a dictionary, or can you just have
This
like,
you mean?
no, the individual ones wrapping translation to response?
That's just individual elements inside the dictionary.
Okay,
Right?
okay. So you,
that's
like-
the top level keys.
JavaScript, for example, you would just have the key, a colon, and then the response
Yeah.
translated text.
Yeah.
But this, you have to wrap it in those curly braces to make an individual
Yeah.
key.
So what I'm doing here, if you're new to C sharp, right? I could do this, right?
Yes.
Dot add.
Ah, got it.
Right key, C and G key usage, but you know, my key and my value, right?
Yeah.
I could do that. What I'm using here is a shortcut that instantiates the dictionary directly with these
Yes.
elements, right? That's all that's going on there. The problem is in here. It doesn't like this bit. Serialize a dictionary. It should be okay to a string. Because I don't remember changing this line of code earlier on.
Yeah, I don't either, and it
So-
was working fine.
Yeah.
And you're receiving JSON.
The good news is we can do this in the next Code Corner episode.
We could,
We
yeah.
can come back to this because we've got a minute 30. We know that the invocation from you to me
Yes.
is working fine.
Yes. This
The
is you
translation's
constructing
working.
the
Yeah.
the
Right.
return.
All I'm
to-
doing is sending the return back to you. So I suspect that when I'm not about to go live on air in 30 seconds, that I would probably just look at this and go, oh, you idiot, that's what the problem is.
Yeah,
Right.
chat didn't have anything to
No, chat?
say.
All right, okay.
But you mentioned Code Corner. What is Code Corner?
So
Steve?
Code Corner is a show that you and I host once a month.
Yes.
Is it the third or fourth Thursday of the month? I can't quite remember, but
Yeah.
once a month, we advertise it, where we have 3 segments. We have some just general chat with the audience, usually about how do I get started in development, right?
Yes.
Then we have Beginner's Corner, where we're just working our way through different languages. So we started with Python. We've been through C Sharp. Now we're on to TypeScript.
Right.
And I understand that next episode we're having a special guest come on
Special guest
to
next
talk about
episode.
TypeScript.
Yes.
And then we have this thing called Project Corner, where we do a slightly more in-depth project, and this qualifies, right? Our
does.
very first one was a Python Lambda function called backmask,
Right.
right, which reversed audio and etc. Then we did a .NET conversion of that.
Yes.
What did we do last time in Project Corner?
You gave me about 20 minutes
gave
to
you 20
my
minutes, yes.
collectible card.
That was it, collectible cards, yes. So we're working through a collectible cards sample right now.
Yes. Using generative AI.
Yes, that was it. Yeah. So 3 segments. It's a show for beginners and people already into coding. Check us out every month.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for checking us out and seeing Steve's solution to the game day puzzle that I gave him.
Part of the solution.
Part of the solution. You'll have to see the rest
Yep.
on an episode of Code Corner. We will be right back with more live from the AWS Summit here in Paris.